Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. I mean, some of the people are going to be, some of my great baby boomers. Please remember what we're talking about. It's not you. We're talking about those the folks that don't, that actually gave Reaganomics an option, that actually gave the opportunity of others to really screw our kids. That's who we're talking about. We're not talking about those that have feverishly, continuously worked hard to get things right. So when I posted some of this stuff about the baby boomers a few years ago, it created a stink, and I had to try to correct that. Likewise, this time around, the stink wasn't as great that it created, but at the same time, we could see some people that they were acting a bit concerned as far as what we were referring to. So what I want to tell you guys is this is not about, well, before we get started, I want to ask all of you that are watching this right now to go to your Facebook page, or rather go ahead and share this on your Facebook page. It is imperative that we do that. Why is it imperative that we do that? Because the way the algorithms work now, the algorithms are, should I say, not very kind. It's not very kind to us all. That is the bottom line. It's not very kind. And what they're doing is they're throttling back. They're making sure that you go ahead and that the things that you do are immediate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the only way things get done is if you go ahead right now and say, I am going to share this program now. So here's the interesting thing. I have this new tool that I got for sharing items. So as it turns out, we don't have the entire set of programs shared on the different networks that it should be shared on. And the reason it's not shared on the networks that it should be shared on is that they give this thing what they call, I guess it's a 5% rule, a 5 minute rule or something like that. So what I'm doing right now as we speak, and you guys haven't shared yet, what I'm doing right now is going back and requeuing some of this stuff to get them shared all at once. So bear with me as I copy the link, as I go over to this new tool that I have called Postcron. And the next thing that I do with Postcron is to go ahead and disable that little second there. But what we're going to do, my dear friends, before we get started, is make sure that all of you who want visibility of the show have it. So that is what I'm working on right now. And if you'll give me 10 more seconds, actually more like 15 more seconds, we will have all this thing queued in a minute. But for those of you who are on already, I need you to go ahead and share now, because that's what I just did as well. So I think we're in business. Anyhow, today's show is going to be about the baby boomers and what it has really done to millennials. It's a very touchy subject because a lot of baby boomers feel like they're having a hard time right now. Why is anybody talking about them having it easy? Why is anybody thinking that for some reason they are having a good time at it when they're suffering? Well, the reality is it's not all of them. To put it bluntly, it's very few of them that actually affected any type of problems that we're having right now. And that is what we are going to talk about. That is what we will be mitigating. So for those of you that are just showing up now, please go ahead and share. Title of the show today, Some Boomers Stole Our Wealth. And guess what? They must pay it back with interest. How does that sound to you? How does that really sound? They must pay it back with interest. Secondly, subtitle, 10% of boomers stole the wealth of millennials and everyone else, and it must be recovered. Yes, we must recover it. Look, today I came across an article that really upset me. It had to do specifically with generational theft. It is a subject I have written about several times. Every time I see the numbers, they seem more daunting. Many boomers get upset because most are not wealthy and don't take kindly to the fact that much of their lost wealth and the wealth potential of millennials were indirectly their doing. What do I mean by that? We'll talk about that later on. This is not meant as an attack, but as a statement of fact, with the hope that in taking responsibility, this generation will begin voting to restore what was legally stolen. And note I said legally stolen. Why do I say it like that? Because it is the policies that we supported. It is a policy supported by boomers that actually put millennials in the situations that they're in right now, that actually put many folk in the situations that they're in. So what we have to do going forward is to mitigate what was done. That's the only solution to the problem. And what that means is taking responsibility, asking everyone that you know to take responsibility, specifically, hey, baby boomers, that is you. So, what's happening in the news today before we go on to the rest of the show? Brother Trump seems to believe that he is beyond the reach of anyone. He can pardon himself. He can not only pardon himself, but he can pardon whomever he wants. And you know what's interesting, folks? I agree with him. The only solution we have for Donald Trump in the long run is impeachment. Is that something we need to talk about now? Not really. Let's let the investigation take its course. Folks, if you're just joining us, I'm asking you to please share this page, share this show on your page right now. Very, very important. Why? Because Facebook will not give it the visibility it needs unless it shows that there are, in fact, people sharing it. So that's why I stayed at the beginning of my program, always trying to get folks to share because we have important issues to cover. Very important issues to cover. What else is there in the news? Yes, other than him wanting to pardon himself. Well, the Democratic lead is probably just about evaporated by now. It was going. And one of the interesting things that I want to discuss is what occurred, and we're going into the show about the baby boomers in a minute. But you know what? Let's do the baby boomers first, and then we'll go into what occurred last night on the Daily Kos with one of the articles that I wrote, because I think it is something very important and it touches on what we're going through right now. So how do I want to start this? I want to say, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Está bien. It's time for the weekly blog post. Folks that have just joined us, please go ahead and share the show on your wall, Twitter, Tumblr, your page, your Instagram, everywhere else. Let's go ahead and get busy. Let's go ahead and make sure that we make a difference. The title of the show, 10%, or the title of the blog of the week, 10% of boomers stole the wealth of millennials and everything else. The title is shocking, but unfortunately, shockingly accurate. And what was that title again? 10% of boomers stole the wealth of millennials and everyone else. I chose to use the word stole because maybe I should have put legally stole or something like that in there, but I specifically wanted to get your attention. A 10% of these boomers effected policies that in effect stole your future, stole your money. And for the boomers that are in pain right now, for the boomers that are having a problem right now, not we all, but many of you supported the policies that led us here. And what I call willful ignorance. And why do I call it willful ignorance? Because during the debates of Reaganomics, during the debate of voodoo economics, during the debate under Senor Bush, we spoke about that, and you had two sides to choose from. And most folks decided to choose on a side that gave them just a few bucks in their pockets that further eroded their future. That was a willful choice. And if you made well, let's continue. A small percentage of boomers got many boomers to support policies that screwed themselves and the future generations. That is no accident. That is no accident that you voted the way you voted. That is no accident that you decided to choose those options. That's not an accident. So let's get over the fact right up front that the people who were voting in the 80s, the strong voters in the 80s, were that big group called the baby boomers and others. And let's also be accurate in stating that many of them, including those folks that call themselves the Reagan Democrats, voted for policies that in the long run would screw them. That is what they did. No two ways about it. Now, an article, and that's not all of you, please. That's not all of you. So for those of you that have been voting correctly, continuously, that's not you. Folks that are just getting in, I see a lot more people just jumped in. Please go ahead and share this program on your Facebook page, your Facebook wall. Share it all over Twitter, everywhere. We need you to do this. These are important topics that we're talking about. Okay. An article by Paul Bouchet titled "The Taking of Millennials' Wealth by Rich White Boomers" lays it out very well as he lays out the absolute numbers. You cannot spin this stuff. You really cannot spin this stuff. For all my friends that are out there all the times talking about the millennials who are not doing what they're supposed to do, who owe all that money, who just can't do college on their own, let's remember how boomers had it, what they had to go through to go to school, and what those millennials we are asking them to do. My daughter, who's in med school, if completed, she will be done with over likely close to $500,000 in student debt, even though I paid all of her undergrad school and more. That is the life we live in today. Let's remember that. And that is because we chose as a society to elect people that were immoral, selfish, indifferent to reality, indifferent to people, and caused a tax base that was deficient, and in that process made everything more expensive for those people we claim to love, our children, the millennials. But you know what? We put them there. So here's what Paul Boucher said. 10 years after the recession, most Americans, including baby boomers, are still struggling with finances. The Wall Street Journal, cheerleader for capitalist-driven recoveries, noted that millennials, Gen Xers, and boomers are all still poorer than in 2007. No change, my friends. 2007 to 2018, 11 years, and they're poorer than they were then, when the reality is what we expect is for people's wealth to increase as time goes on. But no. But the incredible prosperity of about 10% of the boomers. Here it is, boomers, 10% of you. 10% of the boomers. 10% of the boomers is beyond dispute. As the numbers below will show, most of those lucky people are older white males. Now, there's this myth. There's this myth that white males are under attack. I have a blog that I'm writing from a guy that called me out today at Starbucks, white guy, friend that comes into Starbucks all the time, and he said, Egberto, do you have 15 minutes? I want to discuss some stuff with you. What do you want to discuss, my brother? I want to talk some stuff about race because I'm having some problems with some of the white guys that I'm hanging around. So I want to talk some definitive stuff with you. To which I said, my brother, you don't know how happy that makes me. A white guy comes up to me and say, I want to talk to you about race issue because I am talking about race issues with my other white friends and brothers, and I'm having a problem. I need some help. So it was a busy day, but I said, you know what, brother, let me finish putting this last blog out. I want to talk to you. So we had a good talk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to blog about this talk that we had because it is prescient. But anyhow, one of the things I informed him about is how race was being used, even with this boomer thing, and how boomers voted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to really enrich a few. And you know who those few are? That 10% we're talking about. Most folks are just fine, but it's that 10% we're talking about. Anyhow, in the past 8 years, the 1% gained $6.7 million each. You heard that? That's not a joke. That's real. In the last 8 years, the 1% gained $6.75 million. Top 1%. The 2 to 10% gained $700,000 each. So not a lot of money comparatively, but they got a lot of money, $700,000. And the poorest 50% of American adults lost an average of $3,000 each. Trump voter, you lost $3,000. The funny thing about it is I can see why those, assuming for those who voted for Trump on economic reasons, and, there's a percentage of those, they could say, the system has been failing them for the last several years. They've lost $3,000. But notwithstanding that, this is because we were still following Reaganomics, supply side economics. Even under Obama, the gravity of Reaganomics is so strong that changing it, moving it around is so difficult to do. So, henceforth, the bottom 50% of America, that's a lot of people. That's over 160 million people lost $3,000. The bottom 50%, which includes most of the indebted millennials, again, the millennials are the bottom of the bucket, okay? They saw their average net worth fall to about $8,000. And that's a lot, technically speaking, because many of them, especially the ones in college, med schools or whatever, their net worth is negative several $100,000. Several $100,000. Okay, so let's continue this, my dear friends. That's the average wealth of people in many developing nations. Part of the reason is the refusal by employers to pay a living wage. The wages of America's poorest 50% have remained stagnant since the recession, continuing a 40-year trend. Reaganomics in action. I repeat, Reaganomics in action. And you know who voted Reaganomics in action? Yes, Republicans did, but many folks who call themselves the Reagan Democrats, they voted their own demise. And we can recover it, though. I have a solution, and I'll talk about that after reading the blog of the week. Anyhow, he continues with a statistic, that is Paul, that illustrates another form of generational theft. And I want you to listen to this one really keenly. And folks, if you're just joining us, please don't leave this part. There's some important stuff we need to cover. I'd like you to please share this show right now on your wall, on your page, on your Twitter, on your Tumblr, everywhere else. This is very important. So he continues with a statistic that illustrates another form of generational theft. And here it goes. Despite being better educated, millennials are earning 30% less than baby boomers at the same age. In good part because full employment includes gig jobs that pay little more than half the wages of full-time employees. For those of my listeners who don't know what gig jobs are the jobs like Uber, B&B, what do you call it? B&B, whatever that is for your, if you have your home. Other gig jobs include things like those people that run around distributing restaurant foods. They jump in your car, go to McDonald's, distribute it to somebody who doesn't want to drive to McDonald's. Those are gig jobs. And to some people, it looks like a little bit of good money now. But what happens is you take all the risk, right? You take the risk which is not bad. But I mean, we have to be frank. Those gig jobs, when you take all the expenses into account, don't pay much. Especially now that gas prices has gone up 30-40%. What it means is that your income has suddenly dropped a whole bunch because your gas prices, doing your Uber and your Lyft and all these guys has really gone up. So we have to look at that. The gig economy, it's not. It works for the guy who runs the computers that manage the gig economy. It doesn't generally work for the person who has to bust her butt to make a few bucks. So let's keep that in mind. Gig jobs that pay little more than half wages of full-time employees. In 2007, over 50% of college seniors had job offers waiting for them at graduation. 10 years later, fewer than 20% did. Planning for the future is generally out of the question. 2/3 of 21 to 32-year-old millennials have nothing saved for retirement. 2/3, the vast majority. As a result of all the hardship, most 25 to 29-year-olds live with their parents or grandparents than at any time in the last 75 years. That isn't by choice, people. That is what we did to them. The voters who elected Reagan, the voters who elected Bush, the voters who elected even Clinton. And yes, all Democrats, that's going to sound bad. But remember, Glass-Steagall, the thing that deregulated the investment banking, that was signed by Clinton. And to some extent, that was a big responsibility for the demise in 2008. Yes, it has a whole lot of faults. But had there been no Glass-Steagall, there is a good chance there was no 2008 crash as it did. It will still be a demise, but not the kind of crash that we had. So we have to be accurate in calling out all sides. I always talk about the establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans. The differential is not much when it comes to economics, okay? So don't let them fool you. You really want true economic change, you have to elect progressives, and you have to force their hands when elected. Okay? Now, how did they do this? Writer Stephen Bill describes the cunning ways of well-positioned boomers. Ingenious financial and legal engineering turned our economy from an engine of long-term growth and shared prosperity into a casino with only a few big winners. They created exotic and risky financial instruments that separated those taking the risk from those who would bear the consequences. They were able to consolidate their winnings, outsmart and co-opt the forces that might have reined them in. The result is a new divided America. On one side are the protected few, the winners, and who don't need government for much, and even have a stake in sabotaging the government's responsibility to all its citizens. On the other hand, or on the other side, are the unprotected many. The richest individuals, the corporations, and have benefited from 75 years of public funding for the technologies that are now replacing working people with robots. Amazon depends mightily on our infrastructure. Apple on our phone innovations. Google on our internet. All the modern apps have their foundations in the basic research that is still largely funded by our tax dollars. So we have Bezos, who's making, he's the richest man in the world now. Jeff Bezos doesn't deserve that money that he has. That was built by you. You are the one that developed the infrastructure that he is using to sell all this stuff that he's selling. You're the one who did that, not El Señor Bezos. But when it comes to getting the spoils, El Señor Bezos gets it all. He pays his employees a little bit of money, and he gets it all. Folks, if you're just joining us, please go ahead and share these shows. It's so important that we inform people. So don't feel, for the solution that I'm going to give, I don't want you to feel like you're taking something from somebody. I don't want you to feel guilty. I just want you to support it. I want you to start thinking about how we get these things effected into action, because it is a must that we do that if the middle class are going to recover, if millennials are going to stand a chance. So if you're just joining us, please go ahead and share this program. So let me end the blog, and then we'll go into solutions, and then I'll go to the page and see what you guys are saying. But anyhow, this economic aberration is the reality the most boomers and subsequent generations are living with now. Unfortunately, for many boomers, it was a result of willful ignorance that traded marginally lower taxes at the expense of future economic prosperity for all. It is clear that the generational theft cannot continue. In fact, 10% of boomers' excessive wealth should be recovered and reinvested where it should have been in the first place. I stand by that statement. That sounds like, oh my God, you're going to take away money that was legally earned. No, that's not what I am thinking about doing at all. At all. But it must be recovered. And how do you recover it? It's ill-gotten gains, period. And the ill-gotten gains came about because we had one, lobbyists that go out there, lobbyists who go out there and convince the Congress people and senators to vote against the interests of their constituents are the ones who made the profit. So they bribed politicians for that profit. Legal? Yes. Right? No. Likewise, these are the guys who were permitted to create financial instruments that screwed us all. In other words, look up default swaps. Look up default swaps are one of the financial instruments used to rip us off, to take us to the cleaners. They're called derivatives. Okay? Now, interestingly enough, we had derivatives of derivatives of derivatives that eventually became circular. And let me give you an example of how these guys make money. Because they produce nothing, right? But here's the deal. Let's say I have an investment here that's $100,000, but it's a kind of a dubious investment. It is, I gave a whole lot of mortgages I gave $1 million worth of mortgage. I'm just using a lot smaller money. I gave $1 million worth of mortgages that to people who really some of them could default. What I then do is I go buy a credit default swap, or go buy an insurance policy on that $1 million, so that in case that $1 million, some of that default, the insurance company pays me to make me whole. All right? That insurance company, that's one derivative. That insurance company who then goes ahead and loan me money, he or she wants to make sure that in case they have to pay me off, they're covered. So they go to another insurance company and say, hey, I want to buy an insurance policy that covers this in case I got to pay that. And then they keep doing that over and over again. And eventually, you know what happened? The same guy that gave insurance to one, that bought insurance from person X, ends up being the person who insured person X. When you do all the permutations, it's a derivative of a derivative of a derivative eventually becomes you. And that's what happened. So we had a corrupt financial system that allowed those instruments to exist. That wasn't done by the average baby boomer. That wasn't done by millennials at all. They had no choice. They had no claim. But when Clinton passed Glass-Steagall, it facilitated a lot of that. When Ronald Reagan passed voodoo economics and gave tax cuts like a bat out of hell, when all your state governments started giving tax cuts like a bat out of hell, like bats out of hell, it meant that your kids would be paying more for college. It meant that your kids would be paying more for just about everything. It meant your insurance for hospitalization, everything went up. You know why? Because that 10% of the boomers, they were making a killing. That 1% of the people and that 10%, that 1%, they were making a killing on you. You got a few dollars, but you know what? All that few dollars, they took it right back away from you. You know why? Because, you got a few dollars and then your insurance rate went up. You got a few dollars and then everything else went up. But those guys who made a killing didn't affect them. And that is what we find very hard to instruct to Americans. Those Americans who still have a good feeling for the tax cut scam, you have to wonder if they have a good feeling for the tax cut scam, what it means, right? Because what it is telling you is that, wait a minute, I give you a few dollars every month. And what happens after that? Your gas bill goes up. Your insurance bill goes up. Everything goes up. When everything goes up, the monies that I gave you as a tax cut didn't eventually come to you. You know where it went? That eventually went directly back to the people who got the big tax cuts. So they got it twice. You paid them several times over. And I've written a show before on how it is the rich folks got paid 3 times. How the rich folks got paid 3 times. So let's be cognizant of that. What I'm going to do right now, folks, is first go ahead and make my pitch. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the boards and see what people are saying. And then we'll go and talk about a little bit of what happened at Daily Coast yesterday. But anyhow, let's get started with my pitch here. I want to tell you, first of all, this is a progressive show. We cover a whole lot of issues. We bring in progressive politicians here every so often, not every so often. Actually, we're going to have quite a few going forward. We're going to have somebody in supposedly this week that will be discussing some very, very important issues. I won't talk about it right now because I'm still working on getting this person who wrote a very important paper, and he's going to be on the show. I think you're going to really enjoy that one. So what we do here is we cover a lot of the issues in better detail than you would get on mainstream media. And it's not only that we cover it in better detail. What's important to note is that these guys, because of who their advertisers are, cannot tell you all there is to tell you. They cannot tell you that the drug prices that you're paid is a ripoff. They cannot tell you in often that the drugs that you buy for your health is really created by you, by research funded by you. And when it is time to sell it back to you, they give it to a corporation, and that corporation then goes ahead and does a little bit of testing and then marks the price up through the roof for you. If you doubt it, just look at their profit margins, better than anybody else. They don't tell you when Google is on the internet and we are doing all these things. They didn't create the internet. You did. You created the technology for all these things. These companies just monopolized on it, capitalized it, and made a whole lot of money on stuff that you purchased. What I'm asking you is keep programs like this on air so that we can inform people, so that when they go to the ballot box, they cannot be fooled by the corporate advertising, that they can really have the information that matters. Really that matters. So go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright and be a subscriber. We have a lot happening, and it's not just about Politics Done Right. It is about all the news that we provide at egbertowillies.com, the Liberal Network, the Single Payer Healthcare Now, and several other websites. We work for that. We go ahead and invest in that. We make sure that you are covered with real information, and we keep you up to date all of the times. We go out there in the field. We were out there in D.C. for the Guns March. We were out there in D.C. for the Women's March. We were out there we're all over the place making sure to give you the kind of coverage. We're going to be in New Orleans for the Netroots Nation 2018, where all the politicians are going to be coming to tell all of us bloggers, the several thousand bloggers that will be out there, this is why you need to talk about us. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to be holding their feet to the fire. We're going to be out there with all those politicians, and we're going to be holding their feet to the fire, carrying your message. Why else should you support this show? The other reasons for supporting this show, it's your show. You can ask any of our regular callers. If you call in and you want to change the subject, this is your show. We can change the subject on command. And the reason why is we understand that I may pick a subject, and it may be a subject that you think, okay, let's get it over with. And this is of very much importance, and we do that. And why do we do that? Because we want an interactive show. We want a show where you can come in and you have a stake in it. And what do I mean by stake in it? When you watch the news, you are being told what a few people, a few producers decide you need to know. On Politics Done Right, I may come up with some subjects, and others may come up with some subjects that we cover. But most importantly, a lot of subjects we cover is our emails that come in and say, Egberto, why don't you cover this? Or people have been known to call in to the show and say, hey, can we cover this? Of the time that we began having the Daily Show, I must say there was one time that a caller called in and said, hey, why don't we talk about this? And it was the one subject I didn't know about. Usually every time they call in, I know what subject we're going to talk about because I am pretty up to speed on the subjects. This one I didn't know. So what I said is I gave the platform to the caller, and I said, sir, I don't know the subject, but you do. You're the one who brought it up. The floor is yours. And that's what we do. Interactive news, crowdsourced news, and everything else. It is your show. So please go ahead and go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. please become a subscriber. Please become a member. That is how we continue to get the message out. If we want to make a change, every time you hear somebody say something to the effect of, you remember when Obama was running, Obama told everybody, because you are the change you were waiting for. And a lot of people thought that was kind of corny, right? I never thought that was corny. That is real. You are the change. You are the change that you're waiting for. And what I mean by that is, if we really want to change, you're going to have to be the one that goes out there and effect that change. It's not the politicians, it's not the party or anything that's going to do it for you. Because a party has a vested interest in the status quo. When I look up my shows on the right rail and the left rail. They're both going in the same direction. So the left of the party, or the left side, the Democratic establishment, and the right side, the Republican establishment, if they are left and rights of the same rail system, they're going in the same direction. There's not much difference, right? So those are the things that we have to be cognizant of. So please go ahead and go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Become a member. It is worth becoming a member. I promise you there's so much that we are going to have to offer you going forward. There's a whole lot. Okay, my resident, Michael Rudnin, has taken over the information. But let's start going ahead and read this stuff. Bruce Pollard. Welcome aboard, Bruce. When will a millennial be old enough to be president or senator or representative? Could this be a problem, or should they get started now in local politics? They should get started now in local politics, because that is where most things happen anyway. I mean, if they came and went on to the Houston City Council, the San Diego City Council, they can have an immediate effect on the people in their neighborhoods. And not only that, they can start fomenting or start putting out the types of policies, progressive policies, that people start to feel comfortable with, so that in the long run they vote for it on a national level. Mike Cisak, my resident conservative, welcome aboard. Egberto, I have researched much of this, and the facts don't match your claims. Just for your information, I would love for you to prove to me that the facts does not match my claim, because I'm sure of these numbers. These are unless you don't believe the numbers that are printed by the government agencies, then, again, what are facts? We have to have some baseline that we trust. Matthew Tillman, well, president is just 35 years old. The oldest millennials, myself included, fall under that. Great. Michael Rudnin, Egberto, only times I've been ever seen you miss one is Google. Don't be evil. Skynet program and the Yulin Dog Festival. Yeah, hey man. You got me on that one, because those were things that I didn't quite know. But it's okay. I have you, Mr. Rudnin, to keep us all up to speed. I've always told all my listeners, we have the smartest bunch here. We have the smartest regulars, man. And those of you coming in, I want you to become regulars as well. Bruce Pollard, hello again. Oh, I guess I read that out of line. Okay, Daniel Ledo, my other conservative. I was telling a friend at Starbucks this morning, he said, oh, yeah, but you're probably just a liberal. So I said, oh, no, I have steady conservative listeners, and two of them are pretty active on the page, specifically Daniel Ledo and Michael Cisak. I didn't give them any names. Don't worry, Ledo. I didn't blow your cover here in Kingwood. Then, of course, Ledo says, Egberto the socialist complaining about stealing wealth. LOL, hypocrisy is funny. Then sad. No, sir. What I said is we are going to recover what was stolen, but we're not going to steal it. We're going to do it in the legal form, just like they did it in the legal form. We're going to tax the whole hell out of it, and you can call it redistribution if you want to, but I'll talk about that later on. All right. Let's Michael Rudd in Democratic primaries tomorrow in California, Iowa. Yes, and there's a problem in California. If you're in California, if you love California, if you have people in California, you have some work to do. I don't have the time to do call-in because I have to prepare all this stuff, right? But you can help. Go find out how you can go ahead and call in that district. I think in the Orange County that covers the district that covers Orange County. There's a Russian-loving congressman. I think his name is Mach Bacher or Ra Bacher or something like that. We're trying to get him out of office, right? Well, as it turns out, there are two Republicans that are running, and it may turn out that two Republicans win the 1 and 2 instead of the Democrat-Republican or Republican-Democrat or Democrat-Democrat to represent that Orange County. The only way to mitigate that is for you guys to call up and get an overwhelming support from the Democrats in Orange County to come out to make sure that that is one seat we take away. Very important subject. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Radnin. The article being discussed. Okay, thank you. Money grab, pure and simple, disgusting. I hope you mean it was a money grab by the 10% and not a money grab but when I talk about being recovering. Okay, Michael Radnin, the last time I shared something on this topic, I got a heck of a lot of flack. Yes, you do. Anytime you talk about boomers, but you have to qualify it, right? And I think this article did a perfect job of qualifying the baby boomers issue. It's when we say the baby boomers stole from the millennials, what we should really say is the elite baby boomers stole from baby boomers and millennials and Gen Xers with what they did. I think when we cater it that way, we bring in those boomer allies that we need to change policy with their vote. All right, let's see what else we have here. Michael Dean Newton. Hello, Michael Dean. At least Bezos Amazon saved the expense. Matthew Timmer, oh man, that's messed up. Let's see what else is here. Daniel Lado joined. Jill Rollins Muffin. Welcome aboard, Jill. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to do one more refresh before I go into what I call the solution to the problem. But bear with me one quick second. I didn't write the solution to the problem in the blog because I just wanted to talk about it. Michael Rudnan added, okay, no, that is a repeat here. Let's see. With the president 35 years old, this stuff rotated everything on me. Let's see what it says now. Okay. All right. Look, before I go into what occurred at Daily Coast, the solution to the problem is simple. We had, you'd hear a lot of capitalists, you'd hear a lot of people talk about redistribution is bad, right? They'd always tell you that redistribution is bad. You're capturing monies from people who didn't earn it. But ironically, that is what, they're correct. That is what we're doing. We have redistributed monies from the bottom, meaning from the middle class, from the poor, to a very select few, a top 10%, we've redistributed money to them. How did we do that? Okay? We created all these, as they mentioned in the one part of the article, we created all these instruments that created a method of legal theft. In other words, we have investment instruments, and these investment instruments, we charge for them, we got paid for them, and in the long run, when they went bust, we lost it all. The person who bought a house they couldn't afford but put a big down payment or whatever down payment in it and paid a whole lot worth in mortgages, those mortgages went to the people. They collected it. They mortgaged that mortgage, so they were left whole, right? Many of them were left whole. In other words, they sell you a house, you sign all the papers. A month later, they sell that paper to an aggregator. That aggregator turned out all those papers from these different mortgages into an instrument. They sell it as some sort of a financial instrument, and it goes on and on and on. But the people who originally sold it, they're made whole. That was a transfer of wealth. That was a transfer of wealth. So there was a mechanism that was created, and that is just one of many. So what we have to do now is to realize that most of that wealth was ill-gotten. And how do you mitigate that? Well, we can't go and look at every single investor or every single person and say, oh my God, that has to be, that what you did was wrong or whatever. We can't do that. It's impractical. What we can do is start defining income levels. First, we have to define worth. And in defining worth, we have to look at professions where we define worth. Teachers, underpaid, very much underpaid, very worthy. Immediately, we need to talk about giving them very large payment increases. We go through all our governmental employee selections and figure what that's going to be. How do we better pay these people an appropriate wage? Once we do that, we pay them. We raise their rates immediately. How do we pay for that? We're not done yet. So we also go ahead and we determine what we are going to call a living wage throughout the country, a minimum living wage. Is that $15 an hour? Whatever that it is, that's beyond my my expertise level. There are people who know how to compute those things better than I do. But we determine as a country what is the minimum full-time job that a person must have to live on to live, eat, and exist. And that becomes the baseline of what we call a living wage. Period. Punto final. There's this stuff called basic income. We can work with the government on a basic income versus a minimum wage. Whichever one works better, it doesn't matter to me. The idea is working people and disabled people, everybody else, should have a living wage that they can exist with dignity. Those who can work, work. Those who can't work, that's the reason we have a society. After we figured out what all these things that all these numbers are going to be, we define, and by the way, there's another thing that we have to cover, and that is we determine a grow down on our budget deficit, on our debt. I'd grow down on our debt. Maybe we amortize it over 100 years or something like that. I don't know. Again, that's beyond my pay grade, but those are the things we look at. Our debt, our minimum living wage, and we increase the salaries of all professionals working for the government, etc., to what they really deserve. And we have agencies, we have organizations to determine that. That is going to give us, that reality then is going to give us what we call what is the word that I want to use? It seems like we've lost the connection here, so I'm going to have to recue it. So if you hear something, you know what's going on. It's going to be a quick recue. But anyhow, after we've calculated all, bear with me.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
Well, we can't do that right now, so we'll just have to say that for until the rest of the show, we cannot take any callers. I don't know what happened there, but anyhow, here's what we'll do. What we have to tell you. So if you have anything to say, please put it inside of the window, inside of the right under the show. But that number, the pay down on the debt, the amount that we're going to pay governmental workers that are underpaid right now, and what it will take to have a combination living wage, basic income. I don't know that. Let the professionals determine that. That gives us a baseline of what our tax base is supposed to be. Now, we take that and we divide that among what the total wealth of the top 10% or whatever is. And in a form of gradation, we determine what the tax rates ought to be to get those bills paid. In other words, what's going to be happening in real time is a pay down of the debt, let's say over 100 years or whatever it turns out to be, that the people who deserve income, which are an investment in society to make sure that society can go on, and a basic income for those people who the capitalist system is unable to support, they are all taken care of. Nobody's sucking on the system or anything like that. It is just a system that ensures people can take care. And by the way, I did forget to add one to that I thought about, and that includes as well Medicare for all. Okay, Medicare. These taxes also include Medicare for all. Now, when we include the totality of this, of course, that's going to run right down to the middle class as well, having to pay a certain amount that they would have normally paid in a fraction of what they would have paid for insurance. These things are doable. What it means, however, is Bezos is not going to be worth $75 billion. The truth of the matter is he's not worth $1 billion. But that monies would be recovered over time. People will say, oh, well, that will have an effect on the economy. You bet it will. But you know what? If they choose, if the wealthy choose to hurt the economy because they're going to pay more taxes, I said, so be it. Because for everything they do to hurt the economy, I am saying at that point the government comes in and says, nationalize. So let me give an example. If we go ahead and start to tax the oil companies, et cetera, and they say, well, we'll pass everything on to increase gas prices, although increasing the gas prices may be a good thing because people use less of it. But let's use something else. The price of something else goes up. We tell them, look, that isn't a part of the deal in our new capitalist, or not capitalist, in our new free enterprise system. That's not a part of the deal. You do that, fine. We'll nationalize the company. It's a public company anyway. It doesn't belong to anybody. It just belongs to shareholders, right? So we'll nationalize it. We'll go ahead and we'll pay off the shareholders, and we'll take the company over because it belongs to a whole bunch of people. People don't understand. Corporations are really something within themselves, right? Corporations belong to a whole lot of people who own pieces of it. And if that corporation who has a charter misbehaves, we just say, okay, we'll take your charter away. We'll pay off the assets to you, and we'll take the company and run it. That threat alone will keep a whole lot of folks in line. And I don't want to hear folks talking about Venezuela because that's a completely different case. Yes, it's something that I talk about, how it is sabotaged by the, a lot of times it was sabotaged by the wealthy in that country, which is true. But in America, I can guarantee you things would quite be different. But this requires an informed voter. It requires people that are actually be a part of the system and demand their worth. There's nothing inherently better about Jeff Bezos than you are. The system has to make you believe that these guys are super ingenious. They have to make you believe that Bill Gates is great, much greater than you are. That just ain't so. They're just great at manipulating the current economic structure that we have. We could have had a completely different economic structure that would have ensured nobody could hound or hoard capital the way they have. Let me see if I have any more information from people. You know, though, folks, this requires a different type of thinking. Because through the Powell Manifesto and other devices, we have been indoctrinated to all purposes. Let me see. Clifford Ponders says, this guy loves to listen to himself talk. Oh, not really. I don't like to listen to myself talk. But right now, I can't take any calls. But if you have something to add, Mr. Pounders, Clifford Pounders, I would love to, I'd love to say whatever it is that you want to add. It's not that I want to be talking all the time. So I would love to say whatever you want to say. So please, if you have something to add, Mr. Clifford Pounders, go ahead and put it in the wall, given that our phone system right now for some reason is down. But we'll be more than happy to put what you want to talk about. It's not that I want to listen to myself. Trust me. My callers know that, and my listeners know that. Michael Redden says, we created billionaires. No one needs that much. It's more than their friends and families can spend in a dozen lifetimes. Considering the wealth inequality has resulted in 140 million Americans struggling against poverty, some degree of wealth distribution may be required, starting with fixing the top marginal tax rate. Yes, I think the marginal tax rate at some level should be over 90%. There's no doubt there's a reason why it was there. Michael Rendell said, only time. Oh, well, I read that one already. So, folks, if you have some other stuff, we're almost near the end of the show, but if you have some other stuff to add, please, 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 feel free. Unlike Mr. Clifford, hello, Luann, Gunther, Thomas, nice, thank you for showing up. Again, Clifford, I would love to, I wish the phones didn't just go kaput about 10 minutes ago, because I would have loved to have you on exactly telling me what you want to add to the program. But I bet you're not here anymore. What we usually have is some people jump into the show and drop a bomb and then leave. That is what we call trolling. I hope you're not a troll. If you want to call in, please go ahead and call in. We'll be waiting for your call. Or if you want to talk in, we'll be waiting on it. Focus? I think we're pretty darn focused. Let's see if any more has come in so far. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, come on. Let's see. Okay. I don't have any more that I can recall. Let's see. Will millennials, Tillman. Let's see what else is here. Okay. Now, this week we're going to have, I think this week we have 2 guests lined up, and you'll hear from them in the short term. Folks, we're getting near to the end of the program, and let me just give you a few things that we're going to be doing. We're going to be going to the I think it's the what is the women's the group that elect women in Congress. We'll be attending that on Saturday. I'll let you know the results of that on Monday. yeah, I'll let you know the result on that on Monday. Okay, here is my last ask. I'd like to ask you to become a subscriber of Politics Done Right. It's a very easy thing to do, and it is something that you won't even feel. I like to tell folks all of the times, I do not ask you to do what I don't do myself. I'm a subscriber of thedailycoast.com. You should, most of you should be. It's the largest progressive site in the country, and they do very good work. They get candidates elected. They go ahead and they raise money for candidates. They inform about candidates. They inform about the policy, etc. I'm also a contributing editor and front page writer for that organization as well, but I'm also a donor to the organization. Opednews.com, very liberal site. They a lot of times they drop some of the first bit of news that you need to hear. Democratic Underground, I also subscribe to them. Democratic Underground is a great aggregator of information, not only themselves, but they crowdsource the aggregation of information. DemocraticUnderground.com, also a subscriber there. CoffeePartyUSA.com, I'm a board member of the CoffeePartyUSA.com. We do a whole lot of work as far as trying to engage people into civil dialogue, which is sort of the modus operandi that I try to keep here, why I have both a lot of conservatives and progressive folks in my conversation all of the time. So CoffeePartyUSA.com. And many others. I can't remember them all. So what I'm asking of you is to be a part of this progressive movement. Be a part of helping us keep this going. We are all over the place. We are all over the place. We are on iTunes. We are on TuneIn. We're in Google's Player.fm and all these other things. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright is our is where you can subscribe to the show. Again, that is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Without you, we cannot continue doing the good work that has to be done if we need to get this country to the place that we need to get this country. So I'm asking of you to please become a subscriber. Patreon.com, patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Folks, thank you so kindly for having listened to the program today. We have a whole lot more to cover. We will cover that over the next few months before the election. We're going to try to be as circumspect as possible. We'll try to be as informative as possible. If you have topics that you want us to talk about, do remember that you can just go to info@politicsdoneright.com. Send me an email, drop me a line and say, hey, you need to be covering this. If you have a critique of the program, info@politicsdoneright.com. If you think I'm full of it, info@politicsdoneright.com. If you have something nice to say, info@politicsdoneright.com. If you want me to blog something about you, something that you've done, that you want to get done, that you want to put out there, info@politicsdoneright.com. That we are here to serve you. So if you need to make an announcement, if you are a progressive politician who wants to get on air, info@politicsdoneright.com. We'll get you on air not only here on our Facebook Live, Coffee Party USA, Blog Talk Radio, but also on Pacifica Network 90.1 FM in Houston, and that is carried all throughout the country. So you have options. This is your show. This is how we can put more progressive information out there, and you can be a part of it. Patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And as I say every time I leave, I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.